What's happening, Crossroads? Pastor Daniel here. I am so excited today because my super close friend, Pastor Rob Verdeyen, is going to be preaching the word here at Crossroads. I've known Pastor Rob for many, many years, and he is truly one of my favorite people in the entire world. He pastors Calvary Corvallis in Corvallis, Oregon, and he loves the church, he loves his bride Susie, and he loves his kids, and he really loves Jesus, and I love getting to walk through life with Pastor Rob. So you all know the drill. In a moment, you're gonna see a sermon intro video. And after that video, when Pastor Rob Verdeyen makes his way into the Crossroads pulpit, I want all of you to stand to your feet, even those of you online, and I want you to give Pastor Rob the loudest Crossroads welcome.
Well, thank you. You can be seated. We're in John 21 this morning. If you have a Bible, open up there. We'll put the verses up on the screens. You can follow along too. And we're going to look at a message called Enlarge My Capacity. And I'm praying that this morning God will enlarge your capacity. Even the week of prayer and fasting coming, you know, at our church we've done now 15 years of prayer and fasting, weeks of prayer and fasting. Those are such powerful, powerful times. And perhaps even this message is a message for today, but will be the cry of your heart this entire week. John 21:1, after these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And in this way, he showed himself. So one of my favorite places on all the earth is the Sea of Tiberias, also known as the Sea of Galilee. I've been able to lead tours there 15 times. Next year will be 16. The following year, I'm taking all college students. Maybe one year we'll do a Calvary Corvallis and Crossroads trip to Israel. But it is life-changing to be there. You know, the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. The lowest, and sometimes we don't think of this, the lowest freshwater lake in the world. So why would Jesus choose the lowest freshwater lake in the world to be the headquarters of his ministry? I think like a lot of things there in the land, there's just so many messages that when we'll bow down, when we'll go low, the message of Jesus is there's fresh water, there's living water. Whenever we bow down, whenever we humble ourselves. And so we read of Jesus, he's been crucified about a week earlier, he's resurrected, he appears to his disciples again. Verse 2, Simon Peter. And we read of Simon Peter here, and I want you to note that he's not just Peter, that's who Jesus was wanting him to be, Peter. Rock or stone. He's the living stone of the early church built upon the foundation stone of Jesus Christ, right? And Peter's writing, he calls us to be living stones. But here we want to note that he's Simon Peter. He's acting more like old Simon, and you're going to see this repeated than he is acting like who the Lord was calling him to be. Also Thomas, called the twin. Any twins here? Okay. Got some twins. I can see it. Yep. And so we've got a twin here in the Bible. Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, who are James and John, and two others of his disciples were together. Verse 3, and here it is again. This isn't about Peter, it's about really a backslidden Peter. He's acting more like Simon, the old Simon, than he is the new Peter. And Simon said to them, I'm going fishing. And so this isn't just like hey, it's been hard, I need a break, I need to get out in nature, I need to relax. This is going back to the old life. I'm done. I'm going back to the old life. And it had been a hard week for Peter. If you remember, Peter had denied the Lord 3 times. He even called down a curse on himself, saying, if I know Jesus, let me be cursed of God. And of course, Jesus told Peter that this was going to happen, that he was going to deny him. And Jesus even told Peter that Satan was wanting to sift him as wheat. And actually, he says, Satan has asked for all of you. And that's interesting. The you is the plural, that really Satan's asking for all of us. Just like he was asking for Peter, just like he was asking for the disciples, that he would sift them as wheat, right? That's not a process that we're super familiar with, but in the first century, everybody visualized instantly what was being said. That when you would harvest the wheat, you would crush the wheat, you'd break the wheat. And then you'd take a winnowing fork and you'd throw it up in the air, and the wind would drive away the chaff, the worthless part of the wheat, and then the fruit, the kernel, would remain. And so that's what Satan was wanting to do to Peter, that the currents of this world, the wind would just blow him away, that he would live a Simon life, a worthless life, not the Peter life. And I think that battle's going on over all of us. Are our lives gonna count, or are we just gonna waste our lives? Am I gonna use my breath? Am I gonna walk in the gifting God has for me? Am I gonna grow into the man or woman that God is calling me to be? Well, Peter backslid. I'm going fishing. And they said to him, and this is always the case when you backslide, we're going with you also. You know, isn't it, have you experienced that? When you backslide, it always affects somebody else. You know, just to be really honest with you, I've been down in Corvallis pastoring 27 years now. But to be really honest with you, a lot of those early years were marked by backsliding. God doing a work in my life, backsliding. God doing a work in my life, backsliding. Going to Bible school, backsliding. At one point, I even felt like God was speaking to my heart that, you know, it seems like I had to go back and touch that black sticky tar yet a few more times ago. I don't want that. I don't want that black sticky tar. I want to live in the clean, fresh water of Jesus. I want to live in the light. Well, it didn't affect just Peter. It never just affects us. We're going with you. They went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. Isn't that how backsliding is? You go back to the old life. You remember it was so great, and you go back, and it's just so empty. But when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore, yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. But Jesus knew it was Peter. Jesus was pursuing Peter. And I wonder, as you're listening this morning or sitting here or watching online, if perhaps Jesus isn't pursuing you. It's always interesting what a guest speaker speaks on. I always, when I'm at church and we have a guest speaker, I'm always interested. What has God put on his heart? Perhaps this is the Lord pursuing you. And Jesus said to them, children, have you any food? In other words, have you caught anything? And they answered him, no. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds? What does it matter which side of the boat you put your nets out on? And yet he said, cast the right side of the boat and you'll find some. So they cast. And now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. So if you know the New Testament, you know what's happening. You know that Jesus is restoring Peter. Because 3 years earlier, this is how he called Peter. The multitudes were pressing on Jesus, and he got in a boat. Guess whose boat he got in? Peter's. You think that was by accident? No way. You know, our world makes us think everything is by accident. But God is a God who's constantly orchestrating things. And this was not on accident. And Jesus got in Peter's boat and he taught for a while. Then he said, okay, Pete, let's launch out into the deep. And they got out in the deep. And Jesus said, let down your nets. And Peter said, Lord, you're the teacher. I'm a fisherman. We fished all night and caught nothing. But nonetheless, at your will, we'll let down the nets. And he let down the net. And there was such a great multitude of fish. And I want you to remember this because it's part of what we're looking at today. The nets began to break. It was a miracle catch. And Peter, right at that moment, he recognized who Jesus was, and he said, Lord, depart from me. I'm a sinful man. You're the Messiah. You're God. I'm sinful in your presence. And the Lord said to Peter, don't be afraid. But Peter, from now on, you're going to catch men. You're going to be used in a miracle catch. I'm going to use you in a miracle way to bring fish in. And James and John came. They loaded up their boats. The boats were sinking. You remember, they went to shore. And Peter, James, and John, they forsook all, and they followed the Lord. Well, the Lord is seeking out Peter. The Lord is pursuing Peter. And as this is happening, verse 7, therefore the disciple whom Jesus loved, you know who that is? Gosh, what's up with John? Like, he's special or what? The disciple whom Jesus loved. Well, the more you read the New Testament, you realize, oh, I get it. John just walked with Jesus, and he knew Jesus loved him. And the closer you walk with Jesus, you realize you're the disciple whom Jesus loves. And we read here, the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord. And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, this is kind of strange. He put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and he plunged into the sea. Probably read this at some point in your life. Why did Peter plunge into the sea? And there's a great answer. I believe because Peter knew he just had to get to Jesus and everything was going to be okay. You know, when you're away from the Lord, that's the answer. You just got to get back to Jesus as fast as you can, and everything is going to be okay. And Peter knew that. And, you know, for years I've read this and how he put on his outer garment. Why did he put on his outer garment? Because he's Peter. I mean, you just get to know this big, rambunctious guy. But perhaps there's even more. Perhaps Peter even looked in the boat and said, you know, this is all I got in this boat, this outer garment, and I never plan on coming back here again. That's my sense. I'm going to take what I have, and we're never coming back here again. And I just got to get to Jesus. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far off from land, about 100 yards out, dragging the net with fish. And then as soon as they came to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. So where did Peter deny the Lord? Around a fire. Where's the Lord going to restore Peter? Around a fire. What was Peter looking for all night long, and he caught nothing? Fish. What did the Lord have all along? Right? Such a message. You know, we backslide. We think there's something out there that we are thirsting and hungering for, but the Lord's had it all along. And so Simon Peter went up, verse 11, and dragged the net to the land full. So let's look at these details. Full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not broken. The net was what? Not broken. Okay, we'll talk about that. But what's the significance of large fish? Why does John want us to know they were large fish? Because he's a fisherman. And fishermen always want you to know how big their fish are, right? Like these are just real guys. And John wants you to know they got large fish. What's the significance of the 153 fish? Oh, you say there must be something so mystical. Maybe there is, but I think it just shines light on these are real accounts, right? These are not fables or stories made up. John's an eyewitness. He was there. He remembers counting them. Never seen a catch like this before. And 153 fish. Well, what's the significance of the net was not broken? Is that just random? Like, oh, you read 3 years earlier, the net was breaking. Now there's a miracle. The net was not breaking. Random. I don't think so. I think it's part of the miracle. This was a miracle that the nets were being given greater capacity. That's the way I see it. God was doing a miracle. Normal nets would break, but these nets were being given greater capacity. And I believe this is exactly what Jesus was going to do in Peter. You know, if you think about it, the Lord had called Peter, and Peter was breaking under the strain of ministry. He was coming apart at the seams. His net was coming apart. He had denied the Lord. His life was frayed. And now the Lord's restoring Peter, and he's going to do this miracle. We see it fulfilled in the book of Acts. He's going to do a miracle, giving Peter now greater capacity. And you know, I want to encourage you to pray that. I want to bring it up on the screens. Pray that, Jesus, enlarge my capacity. I want to encourage you to pray that in your own heart as this morning is going on. Do you desire that? You desire that God would enlarge your capacity, that you could serve God in a greater way? Do you see that in Daniel? You know, I see that in Daniel. I see that God has done a work in Daniel. God has enlarged that man's capacity. He's ministering and he's not breaking. It's a beautiful miracle when you witness it in ministry. And I would encourage those of you that serve here and those of you that are attending this morning, pray that. Pray it in your heart. Pray it as you know, you have the capacity to both be listening and praying at the same time. Pray that today. Lord, enlarge my capacity. Give me a greater capacity to serve you. Give me a greater capacity to bring you glory. Enlarge my capacity. Give me greater anointing. Maybe the gifts I already have, Lord, could you anoint me in even greater ways, that there could be even more fruit and more work in my life? Boy, that's my prayer. You know, studying this text for me and we're not even to the best part yet, but it's such a life-transforming text. Lord, I want you to do that miracle in my life like what you were doing in Peter's life, where you were enlarging his capacity. Well, let's read on. We'll skip down to verse 15. When they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, this is where he's restoring him from, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Now, why does Jesus call Simon son of Jonah? And you say, well, Pastor Rob, that's probably his dad's name. Most Bible teachers don't think so. You know, I'm Rob, son of Don. Maybe the Lord was just saying, you know, Peter, son of Jonah, or Simon, son of Jonah. But most Bible teachers believe this is prophetic. How so? Remember who Jonah was in the Old Testament? Jonah failed. Jonah faltered in his faith. Peter was faltering in his faith. Jonah was disobedient, went to Joppa and then to Tarshish instead of going to Nineveh. And Jonah was stubborn. But then you read that beautiful, beautiful passage in Jonah, if you know it, that the word of the Lord came. You know it? The word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. And God took this man that was disobedient. God took this man that was stubborn. Probably none of you can relate to Jonah. God took this man that was even suicidal, and he gave him a second chance, and he used him in the greatest evangelistic harvest in the Old Testament to reach Gentiles. And who is Simon, son of Jonah? The Lord was going to give Simon a second chance. The Lord was going to use Simon to go to the Gentile Cornelius, which was the beginning of the gospel going to the whole world. It's prophetic. Simon, and you're going to see it every time he says this to him. Over and over he says it to him. Simon, son of Jonah, do you, now you can look up on the screens, do you love me? Or it's the Greek word, do you agape me? Now, agape is that greatest love. It's the sacrificial love. It's a total commitment love. What is Jesus doing here? He's restoring Peter. Simon to Peter. He's restoring Simon. How do you restore someone? You know, if we're going to be like Jesus, we're going to be used by God to restore others. How do we restore others? Just like Jesus did here with Simon. It's coming back to Jesus as your greatest love, the total commitment love. Simon, son of Jonah, do you agape me? And then he says, more than these. So what? The big question, what are the these? Some say it's the other apostles because Simon had said, you know, even if all of these stumble, I'll never stumble. I'll die for you. Others say, no, that these are the fish. Success in his chosen profession. I think it's both. Simon, do you love me more than anyone and anything? That's how a person is restored. You know, if you've fallen away from the Lord, if your faith is faltering, if you've backslidden, if you've gone back to the old sticky tar, how can you be restored? You've got to come back to Jesus being the first and great, total commitment love of your life. And so, Simon, do you love me more than these? And he said to him, yes, Lord. You know that I phileo you, a friendship love, an adoration love. It's a weaker love, but you know what? Simon's just being real. I can't say I agape you. I've denied you. And you know, Simon is in such a low place. You know, the enemy was sifting Judas, and Judas committed suicide. You ever think about who Judas might have been in the New Testament if he wouldn't have committed suicide? Judas means praise. I wonder who he would have been when you look at who Peter became. And don't you know, Peter was just under so much spiritual attack to even, I think, probably even just end his life. I've denied the Lord 3 times. I've called down a curse on myself that I'd be cursed if I know him. Lord, I can't say I can't say it. I can't say I've agape you. I phileo you. And he said to him, feed my lambs. Now, to me, this is absolutely spectacular. And I don't know if you've ever seen it before. If you haven't, it's a thrill to get to show it to you. Because what we find here is that it's here that God was committing the care of his flock to Peter. It's here that the Lord is not only restoring Peter, but more. When does the Lord give Peter more? When he's failed. Do you realize what grace this is? We all know what grace is. It's favor that we don't deserve, but do you realize what grace this is? You know, in the world, when you fail, you get demoted. Here you go, Peter. From now on, you can assist those who do the work. You've denied me 3 times. But the Lord doesn't demote Peter. He promotes Peter. He restores him. He gives him even more. What incredible grace. You know, as you look down at Hebrews 4:16, maybe you know it. At the morning prayer time, it was read out this morning. Let us come boldly to the throne of grace. Do you know this verse? It's what we're reading about. Let us come boldly to the throne of grace. Why is it a throne of grace? It's a throne of grace because Jesus has taken the judgment at the cross. It's no longer a throne of judgment if we approach Jesus, but he's paid for all of our sin. And therefore, when we come boldly to him, there's favor we don't deserve. And I want you to look at it this morning. It's what we're reading in John 21. Let us come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy. That is, I put in parentheses there, for our failures. right? When we fail, when we screw up, we come boldly to the throne, not a throne of judgment, it's a throne of grace. And there's mercy for me, there's forgiveness, there's cleansing, there's restoration. But you know what you read here? You read the same thing we're reading in John 21, there's more. There's not only mercy, but you find something when you fail. You find that there's grace to help in time of need. Isn't that amazing how gracious the Lord is? And it just so conquering, just makes you want to just use everything you are in response to God. Makes you want to sing, makes you want to serve, makes you want to just use all that you have for God the rest of your life. You know, it's amazing in my life, some of the times that I've failed the most, God has blessed me the most. I am expecting him to demote me. But he's so gracious. And it's in those times that sometimes we actually fool ourselves and we think we deserve blessing. But when we fail, we know we don't. And maybe this is where you are, that, there's a throne of grace. You can come, because of Jesus, you can come boldly to it. And you're going to find that there's mercy, but not only mercy, you're going to find there's favor. Isn't this incredible in our story? When does Peter receive the call to start feeding and tending and shepherding the flock of God? When he's failed. We have a tendency to look at people in ministry like, oh, they're so holy, they're so righteous, they've arrived. No, God's just been extra gracious to us as failures. Boy, as we restore others, it's so important that we know how to lead them to a throne of grace where they can find mercy or obtain mercy, but there's always more. There's always grace to find. Well, let's keep reading. Verse 16, he said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you agape me? He said to him, yes, Lord. I can't say it. It'd be a lie. Can't say I love you with a total commitment. I phileo you. He says, so it's okay, Simon. You're going to feed my sheep. You're going to take care. You're going to pasture. You're going to tend my sheep. And he said to him the third time, over and over, this son of Jonah. I wonder if Simon even was going, why do you keep calling me son of Jonah? My dad's name is Levi, or my dad's name is Zechariah. I wonder if he even knew at this time how the Lord was going to use him. When Peter denied the Lord that third time, he called down that curse on himself. Only Luke's gospel tells us right at that moment that Jesus looked across the courtyard and made eye contact with Peter. What do you think that eye contact was? You think it was a, I told you so, or a, how could you? No, if you know the Lord, that's not the look he gave him. If you know the Lord, you know that look was, Peter, I love you. Peter, it's okay. I told you beforehand this was coming. I told you that you'd go through this, and the day will come you'll return to me, and you'll be used to strengthen your brethren, he had told Peter. I'm just certain that the Lord looked at Peter like, Peter, this is not your best chapter. But there are much better chapters ahead. And I wonder if the Lord wouldn't be pursuing you, that this is not your best chapter. But he doesn't condemn you. He's for you. He wants you to return to him. Even today is a day where there'll be opportunity to return to the Lord. And Peter said, the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you phileo me? And it says in verse 17, Peter was grieved because he said to him a third time, 3 times Peter had denied the Lord, do you love me? And he said to him, you know all things. This is interesting. Look at that. You know all things. That's a great prayer to pray. Lord, is there anything you want me to know? Would you be praying that this morning? Lord, is there anything you want me to know? You know all things. Simon prayed it. Lord, you know all things. You know that I phileo you. So as you're reading this story, this time Jesus comes down to Peter's level. Okay, I've asked you, do you agape me? Peter, do you phileo me? I'll meet you where you're at. And Peter says, Lord, you know all things. You know that I phileo you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. It's a shepherd's chief job. Twice he told him to feed, once to tend. A shepherd's chief job is to feed the flock the word of God. And now we're going to see something that in response to what Simon prayed, that you know all things. Verse 18, Jesus says this to Simon Peter. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished, right? That's the life of being younger. You just kind of do what you want to do. And of course, as the Lord works in your life, more and more you will go where the Lord wants you to go. But when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands. This is talking about crucifixion. Peter, when you're old, you're going to be crucified. You'll stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. And we know that's talking about crucifixion because verse 19 says, this he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. See, so what Jesus is showing Peter is Peter was so discouraged. He had just felt like he disappointed the Lord so greatly he could never be restored. But don't you know that Peter didn't disappoint the Lord? The Lord knew. He told Peter it was coming. Peter disappointed himself. And he was just in such a low place. Right? That the Lord says, Peter, you pray that I know all things. But actually, I do know all things. And Peter, you do love me with an agape love. You are going to give yourself in a total commitment to serve and follow me. So we'll just finish there this morning, and I'll just bring up a couple things as we finish. What's the key to being restored as we study this together? And I think you could even take it a step further. What's the key to being effective in ministry? It's what Jesus did with Peter. Brought Peter to that place where Jesus was again the agape love, the total commitment love, where Jesus was first in his life. And I wonder if this wouldn't be a morning for you that, to be effective in ministry, the Lord wants to bring you back to that place where he's your greatest love, where you love him with a total commitment. And then secondly, we see this repeated in verse 19. It's when the Lord first called Peter, follow me. Well, now he's restoring him. Peter, you've got to agape love me. I'll meet you where you're at, but that's where I want to bring you. And you've got to follow me. And I think this is so important. Not an idea, not a culture. We don't follow ideas. We don't follow cultures. We don't follow truths. We don't follow churches. To be effective for Jesus, to be restored, we have to follow. Jesus said, follow me. And so easily get lost. I'm following ideas. I'm following cultures. I'm following truths. And I would even point out, Jesus doesn't say to Peter when he calls him, listen to me. Follow me is different than listen to me. It's not just listening to truths. I come to church, I listen to truths. It's follow me. Start doing what I do. It's not, don't keep listening. You've got to start doing. Follow me. And then the third thing I would just point out in this context is that how is a person restored? How are we going to restore others? We're going to bring them back to a first love with Jesus. We're going to get their eyes back on Jesus, not any people that have failed them or churches that have failed them or whatever truths they were following. You've got to come back to following Jesus. And third, we help them find that grace, that throne of grace, right? We help them come boldly to it. There's a throne, not of judgment, it's a throne of grace. It's amazing, isn't it? A throne of grace. There's mercy for us, but there's always grace. God has more than what we deserve. Why don't we stop here? Let's just set things aside, could you? Put any Bibles down or notepads down. Could you do that? If you have anything on, just turn it off, set it aside. If you're taking notes, even for right now, why don't you just set the notes aside? And I wonder if you're not somebody here that this is a morning for you to come back to the Lord. Maybe you've been away from the Lord. Maybe you knew it from the beginning of the message that the Lord is pursuing you. Wonder if this isn't a morning for you to say, Lord, I love you. I want to love you. I want to agape you. I just want to ask you, I want to lead you in praying that. I just love for all of us to pray that, Lord, I agape you. I want to love you with to be the greatest love of my life. Pray that in your own heart. Maybe you've been away, or maybe you just want to be effective for the Lord. Lord, I want you to be the greatest love of my life. And even say those words, I just want to make a total commitment of myself to love you. Total commitment. Pray that. And whoever you are, pray that with me, that, Lord, I want to follow you. I want to live my life following you. And if you find yourself here today and you need mercy, ask the Lord for mercy. Ask him to forgive you. Ask him to cleanse you. To confess anything that comes to your mind to the Lord. Maybe the Lord's had his finger on something all morning long. And just tell the Lord, Lord, just forgive me and cleanse me. And don't you know the Lord has more for us? Let's just finish praying. Could we just all finish praying, Lord, that you could increase my capacity for you. Do a miracle. Do a miracle that you could use me in a greater way, Lord.